Boosie is being investigated by the feds for allegedly setting up Duke the Jeweler and getting him killed after bringing him to a rigged dice game with J. Prince Jr. in Houston. But first, let me break down exactly how this whole setup allegedly went down, because once you hear the full story, it's really gonna blow your mind. And before we even go deeper, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because this is one of those situations the mainstream media refuses to touch.
When we left out the concert, we under the garage, dude went to his car by himself and walked down to the parking lot. That's when somebody tried to rob him and killed the dude. What the hell my 19-year-old cousin gonna try to rob and kill somebody? Bro, we getting money, man.
According to what's being discussed online, this wasn't some random night that just got out of control. People believe this was carefully planned from the very beginning. Duke the Jeweler wasn't just randomly in Houston. He didn't wake up one morning and decide to pull up to a dice game. Allegedly, he was invited under the promise of business, custom jewelry, big clients, big money, the type of opportunity that could take a jeweler's career to another level overnight. And that's the part that makes this whole situation so heartbreaking, because Duke thought he was stepping into a business move, not walking into danger. Social media users say Boosie specifically encouraged Duke to come to Houston instead of handling business somewhere safer. The trip was framed as Labor Day weekend being full of celebrities, connections, and high-profile faces. To Duke, this sounded like networking. To people watching from the outside now, it allegedly sounds like bait. Because once Duke arrived, the environment quickly shifted from business talk into late-night gambling culture. That's where the dice game comes in. According to online speculation, the dice game wasn't friendly and it wasn't fair. People believe it was allegedly rigged from the start. Trick dice, magnetic tables, a controlled environment where visitors were expected to lose. The plan, as many online believe, was simple. Let Duke feel comfortable, let him win a little, then slowly pull him deeper until he started betting serious money. Once that happened, the house was supposed to take everything back. But something went wrong, and that mistake may have cost Duke his life. Multiple internet investigators claim Duke somehow ended up using real dice instead of the rigged ones. Whether it was confusion, a mix-up, or someone slipping, nobody knows for sure. But once that happened, the entire setup collapsed. Duke began winning. Not a little, not pocket change. He allegedly started winning hundreds of thousands of dollars. By the end of the night, people online claimed Duke had walked away up more than $600,000. That's not just money, that's ego, pride, and power being taken in a room full of people who weren't used to losing. The energy allegedly changed immediately. The laughter stopped, the friendliness disappeared, and the room went cold. Witnesses online say Duke wasn't disrespectful, he wasn't taunting, he wasn't bragging, he was simply winning. But in certain environments, that alone is enough to put your life in danger, especially when the people losing believe the game was supposed to go the other way. Some people claim Duke was standing behind Duke during the game, whistling repeatedly. At the time, it didn't seem serious, but now people believe those whistles may have been signals, a way to communicate with others in the room once the situation started going left. Whether that's true or not hasn't been proven, but the detail keeps coming up in multiple accounts shared online. After the dice game ended, the mood reportedly shifted completely. According to Street Talk, there was a private discussion afterward. Angry voices, money lost, emotions high, and that's where many believe the decision was made that Duke wasn't going to be allowed to leave Houston with that money. The next night, Duke attended Boosie's concert. He didn't think anything was wrong. He wasn't hiding, he wasn't running. He had no idea, according to speculation, that people were allegedly tracking his movements, watching where he parked, watching who he came with, waiting for the right moment. After the concert ended, Duke headed toward the parking garage. Surveillance timelines shared online suggest he was walking toward his car when he was approached. What was supposed to be a robbery, according to many, turned deadly. Duke fought back, but he was outnumbered and outgunned. Shots were fired. Duke was hit multiple times. The money he allegedly won at the dice game, along with his jewelry, was taken. And just like that, a man who came to Houston for business never made it back home. After that, the public statements began. Videos surfaced showing emotional reactions, explanations, and attempts to distance certain people from what happened. But what caught the internet's attention wasn't just what was said, it was how often the story changed. One moment, Duke left alone. Another moment, he was with others. Then another version appeared again. And people online said the same thing over and over. When someone is telling the truth, the story doesn't keep switching. What made things even more suspicious was how some individuals focused more on clearing their name than mourning Duke's death. Instead of demanding justice, the energy went toward defending reputations. That didn't sit right with a lot of people. Then the internet started digging. Fans compared timestamps, videos, and movements. They allegedly found footage showing certain individuals leaving the building shortly before the shooting. Others noticed Duke's Louis Vuitton bag, believed to contain valuables, allegedly ended up at someone else's house. That alone sent shockwaves across social media, because if Duke was murdered, why wasn't every item immediately returned to his family? Why wasn't it turned over to investigators? Why was it sitting anywhere else at all? As more questions piled up, frustration grew, and instead of answers, people were met with anger, dismissive comments, attacks toward internet detectives. But that reaction only fueled suspicion even more, because innocent people usually want the truth exposed. They don't fight it, they don't fear it. And that's when rumors of federal involvement began circulating heavily. People close to the situation claim the feds are now looking at phone records, financial movements, and communication patterns, because when something looks organized, when patterns repeat, it stops being a local issue and becomes a federal one. And this is bigger than one name, because once investigators start pulling threads, they don't stop at one name. They look at networks, associations, repeated behavior, similar incidents, and people online believe this case could connect to other tragic situations that happened in Houston involving dice games and out-of-town visitors. That's why this story isn't dying down. That's why it keeps resurfacing, because this isn't just about Duke the jeweler anymore. This is about whether a dangerous system exists in the shadows of hip-hop culture, one that turns business trips into death traps and hides behind fame, money, and silence. And if the feds truly are watching, then this situation is far from over. The truth has a way of surfacing no matter how long people try to bury it.
See some dudes that tried to rob me and walked off by itself.
Boosie also tried to push a narrative that Duke actually lost money at the dice game, which immediately confused people because, according to everyone who was there and everything circulating online, Duke allegedly won big that night. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when Boosie said Duke wasn't upset about losing money, people started asking the obvious question: how can someone be upset about losing when they actually walked away up over $600,000? That explanation didn't make sense then, and it still doesn't make sense now. The math just wasn't mathing, and the internet noticed immediately. What made things even more suspicious is how Boosie's story about what happened after the concert kept changing. One minute, he said Duke left by himself. Then he came back and said Duke was with other people. Then later, the story shifted again, and people online kept saying the same thing. When someone is telling the truth, their story doesn't keep changing every time they speak. The truth stays consistent. Only lies need revisions. But the part that really disgusted a lot of people wasn't just the contradictions. It was how Boosie allegedly tried to turn Duke's death into a situation where he himself became the victim. Instead of centering the man who lost his life, the focus kept going back to how the internet was treating him, how unfair people were being to him, and how all the accusations were affecting his mental health. And people online were like, hold on, a man is dead, a family lost their son, and you're worried about your reputation? In multiple videos, Boosie tried to explain the situation by saying they met Duke the night before, that they were gambling, and that Duke followed them to the concert the next day. He said that after the show, they were under the garage, and Duke walked to his car by himself. According to his version, that's when someone allegedly tried to rob Duke and ended up killing him. He even mentioned his young cousin, saying there was no way someone in his family would do something like that because they already had money and that type of behavior wasn't their style. But instead of clearing things up, those statements only raised more questions. Because people started asking, if Duke truly left alone, how did anyone know exactly where he was going? How did the robbers know when to strike? How did they know he had money on him? Those aren't things random criminals usually know unless someone provided information. And that's where the fake sympathy became impossible to ignore. To many viewers, the emotion felt forced, the timing felt off, the tone felt more defensive than grieving. Real grief doesn't look like a performance. Real pain doesn't require repeated explanations to social media. And the harder Boosie tried to convince people of his innocence, the more suspicious he began to look. Then the internet did what it always does. They started digging. Fans began pulling surveillance footage, social media timestamps, and witness accounts, and that's when something shocking surfaced. Video evidence allegedly showing Boosie's nephew leaving the building shortly before Duke was shot. That discovery alone sent social media into a frenzy. People started lining up timelines minute by minute, comparing movements and locations to understand exactly how everything unfolded that night. And then came the Louis Vuitton bag. Internet detectives discovered that Duke's Louis Vuitton bag, which reportedly contained jewelry and valuables, was allegedly found at Boosie's house. That detail alone raised massive red flags, because people immediately asked, how do you explain that? Boosie claimed Duke asked him to hold the bag during the dice game, but after Duke was murdered, why wasn't that bag immediately returned to his family? Why wasn't it turned over to authorities? Why was it just sitting at someone else's house like it belonged there? Those questions never received clear answers, and once that information spread, people started looking beyond just this one case. Social media users began connecting Duke's situation to other suspicious incidents involving J. Prince Jr. and his circle. They noticed patterns: out-of-town artists and businessmen coming to Houston, attending private dice games, money changing hands, and then something going terribly wrong afterward. To many online, this didn't look like an isolated tragedy anymore. It started looking like part of a larger operation. But this is where Boosie's behavior really shifted. After the internet essentially pieced together a timeline using public information, his whole demeanor reportedly changed. Instead of continuing to play the role of the grieving friend, he became angry, defensive, hostile. He started lashing out at people online, calling them keyboard warriors and internet detectives. He seemed furious that fans were connecting dots and asking questions, and that reaction told a lot of people everything they needed to know. Because if you're truly innocent, why would you be mad at people trying to get justice for a man who lost his life? An innocent person would want the truth exposed. An innocent person would welcome investigation. An innocent person wouldn't attack those demanding answers. But instead of pushing for justice, the energy went towards protecting himself. And that's what made people believe something much deeper was being hidden.